Good evening and welcome to Rock, Paper, Hand Grenades. I'm your host, Joshua Solomon. My fearless co-host, JP Marzillo, is once again out rounding up all the communists and throwing them back over the state line into Massachusetts where they belong. We will see him soon. As always, Rock, Paper, Hand Grenades is sponsored by the Wilson Hill Pistol Club, the oldest sports shooting club in New Hampshire, located right here in Manchester at 1732 Lakeshore Road. We have monthly membership meetings the first Wednesday of every month at 7 p.m., 1732 Lakeshore Road. You can find out more information at wilsonhillpistol.org, where you can also find the training schedule and sign up for training on the website. The next class is Saturday, February 21st. It is Defensive Handgun Level 1. It is, I know it says Level 1, but it is an advanced level class. You must have completed either NRA Basic Pistol or SAFETIA FAST. FAST stands for Fundamentals in Safety Training. Defensive Handgun series is fabulous. It's all about defensive mindset, defensive understanding what your legal responsibilities are in a defensive role, and of course defensive shooting. So that is February 21st. Go to the website and sign up. If you're watching online, you'll see the website at the bottom of the screen. Tonight, we have a very special guest. It is the chairman of the New Hampshire State Republican Committee, Mr. Scott Maltz. How you doing, Scott?
Great. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, so we got big stuff coming up. We've talked to Chris Ager in the past about his plans, and he had a what did he call it? It was a 6-year plan or an 8-year plan, mm-hmm. and the plan started while it was to get control of the state. You know, let's worry about the local, and we've done that. We've got both houses, we've got the executive council, and we've got the corner office. And so he had laid out a plan and executed quite well on it. You know, like we're doing well. And the next couple of phases include, you know, we got to send somebody to Washington, D.C. To represent us at the national level. But at the same time, we have to continue to hold what we've got. And we're coming into a midterm election, typically not good for the party in power. And we've got a few things we want to deal with in the state, but we also have the national races or the Washington races are heating up too. So, sure. And we're in 2026, so we're, 9 months away now?
Yep.
So what's going on? What are we doing?
Well, you know, I've been in this job for a whopping 3 weeks tonight, and so it's been an exciting 3 weeks. It's kind of, as you can imagine, like drinking from a fire hose, but it's been good and a lot of support out there. We have, I've been kind of laying out a vision and a plan, and we've been, the state party is kind of had some leadership challenges over the last, few years. We've had some good people in place, but it's hard to get things done sometimes, and Chris did a good job, Steve Stepanek before him, Jimmy Mack earlier this year did a great job with some stuff, but I'm hoping to take my business experience and some of the things that I bring to the table in terms of operations and really try and build a professional organization that's going to position us kind of like the New England Patriots, right? Not just to win this year, but to be able to win for the next 10 years. Right. And we've been kind of missing that infrastructure piece at the local level that really is going to help us drive out the vote and make sure that we're in the best position to not just win locally, but turn around those federal positions that we haven't won in like a decade.
Right.
So and you look at New Hampshire, we're still kind of that donut hole with everybody around us being bright blue, and we're still kind of reddish purple. We have a good advantage in terms of registered voters, a good advantage in terms of right-leaning independents, but if they don't show up to vote in November, then none of that matters.
Yeah, and that's something that we are historically bad at as a party. We can attribute it to all kinds of things. Personally, I attribute it to I have a day job, and I have trouble finding the time to go door knocking, right? Because I work, so if someone asks me to volunteer to do these things, I really want to, but I don't have the time because I've got a day job, I've got family, and I've got an evening job right here, right? So, so we have trouble rounding up volunteers. Our volunteer structure is one of the things that we play by the rules. We don't pay people either. Right, and I've seen that here in New Hampshire as well, where the Democrats will pay for certain things to take place, and they'll kind of run afoul of some of the election laws. But even more so, you mentioned getting down to the local level. How do we change our relationship with the state party and all of the local committees? Right, we've got a lot of local committees, but how much push do they really have? And being able to organize in the way the Democrats organize, having that kind of database that the Democrats have.
Well, we have a good database in terms of understanding who our voters are. We have a good number of town committees. Town committees are a little tougher just because they come, they go. People, oftentimes it's one person who's kind of the spearheading the whole thing. And if they step back, then there's no bench, there's no succession. So committees will come, they'll go, they succeed, and then they fade. It's a harder structure. And I think to your point, and it's even worse than you described because we have that bright blue around us. They don't have the competitive races in some of those other states that we do, so they can send their people here to New Hampshire, and we've seen that happen, where not to vote, but to do the door knocking.
Oh, they've come to vote.
Oh, and that too. But I mean,
our old friend Ed Nail was a real hawk on chasing them down. So.
But I was listening to Ross Berry this morning, and he talked about the really good steps we've taken to try and tighten that up. And we're not at 100% yet, but I was really impressed to hear what Ross had to say this morning about some of the good things we've done. So I think people can have confidence in that. But to your point, I mean, they're paying people to come from Massachusetts and Maine and Vermont and stand at the polls and knock on doors and do those things that we have to rely on volunteers for. So one of the things that I'm trying to institute is this local victory team sort of thing that kind of either overlays or underlays existing town committee structure. And it's basically looking at 5 people who can help coordinate the important things that we need to do to win elections, which is having somebody to deal with that election integrity. No matter how good the laws are, well-intentioned moderators sometimes make mistakes and need to be corrected. Some of them perhaps are a little more nefarious than that. But we need somebody standing at the polls as a watcher, which is going to serve as a deterrent and a check and a balance. If there are improprieties, we can catch them, have a war room ready to get an 800 number call,
that's a good
and be
point.
able to do that.
We have historically been lax on poll watchers too, across the country. Never mind, locally, but we need to focus on locally. So how do we get those volunteers?
Well, so the whole plan stems about having a single person in each town to help find some people that are interested in doing that. I mean, I talk to a lot of people. There are no shortage of people out there who talk about the 2020 election being stolen. I mean, you can't go very far without running into somebody who feels that way. And I always say to them, boy, do I have a job for you. And then they immediately go and look like a deer caught in the headlights, and off they go as fast as they can. So I would say to your viewers, and I know a lot of your viewers in particular, are those kinds of people.
Well, that's part of what I was getting at when I say I have a day job. What I mean is that we don't have we understand what's needed, but we don't have the kind of time that I'll say it or stereotype them. We don't have the time that jobless liberals who are working off of welfare right, and taking my tax money to live off of. I don't have the same kind of time that they have to go and volunteer like that.
100%.
So I do complain about it. I pay my taxes. I do complain about it. I do what I can to get the message out. This is how I contribute.
Sure.
But I don't have that kind of time to volunteer, and that's why you see the deer in the headlights.
Yeah. Well, and here again, it's the old saying, many hands make light work, right?
Right.
So maybe you can't stay there from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. and take a whole day. Maybe your work won't allow you to do that. Some will, some won't, of course. But maybe you could be there. Well, I could be there from 5 to 7, or maybe I could, take half a day off and maybe work from 7 to 12. Now that means we need a lot more people to cover the time.
Right.
But you think about when are the biggest times at the polls? It's like basically from
First thing in
opening
the morning,
to 9 o'clock or so, and then 5 to closing. So I mean, even if we just covered that, is it perfect or ideal? Absolutely not. But it's a step in that right direction. But I mean, you think about it, we also need some folks to do election day operations. We have county candidates in my county of Merrimack. Our Register of Deeds, who is just fantastic, Samantha Morris. She's a great young lady, good young Republican, and she has 27 towns she has to cover, 10 wards in Concord, 3 wards in Franklin, and she's just one person. So who's going to hold her signs in Salisbury? Well, I need somebody to hold those county signs. I need somebody, and we got to work with the campaigns too. Who's going to hold signs for our federal candidates? Who's going to, I trust the local House reps and Senate candidate can kind of arrange their own people, but working together and try and find out how do we cover those days? How do we build a bigger totem or whatever to cover that space? We need somebody to work. You were talking about door knocking. We need somebody. We're going to be super blessed this campaign cycle because we've got Turning Point that's really ramping things up.
I was going to say that. We do have the local committees, but Turning Point is really putting a push here in New Hampshire, and along with Lisa Mazer, she's the representative here.
And Davis Miller and others, they're doing a great job recruiting and hiring people and looking to turn out the vote. Americans for Prosperity doing kind of the same sorts of things, and those people, again, there's limitations on what we can coordinate, but there is some opportunities to kind of make sure that they have the people they need to help with that effort, and make sure that we're covering the doors, getting the phone calls made. And not for nothing, I mean, all of this takes tremendous amounts of money. And we're really pushing, or I'm really been pushing our Grassroots Givers program, which is basically 10, 20, 30, 50, 100, whatever people can afford. And I realized Bidenomics was hard on people, right? And for some people, even coming up with $10 a month may prove to be a challenge. But if you're willing to invest in the party and willing to invest in these candidates who have ideologies that you support, then that's a great way to do it. I'm looking for 1,000 grassroots givers and trying to raise $30,000 a month just to begin to build that kind of financial support that we need to do mailings, to do some of the support work that we have to do with candidates and things like that. So we have election day operations, get out the vote efforts. We have election integrity. We have March elections coming up, and there's some people that have been doing some great work in local towns. But it's kind of late at this point to really start anything big there. But now is the time to think about what does 2027 look like in March? Mm-hmm. And then in November, you're going to have city elections that year. So what does that look like? We need to start recruiting people for selectmen, people for your budget committees, people for the school boards. And having somebody help work with that recruiting effort is going to be huge because there's 234 towns. I can't recruit everybody. So it really has to be a team effort. And I think to your point, you're right. A lot of Republicans don't have the kind of time that maybe some of the Democrat folks do. But there was a great book out there that I just read excerpts from, but it talked about the one thing. And I would just ask people, what's your one thing? What's the one thing you can do? I don't need people to work full time at this stuff. It'd be great if they did, but I mean, I don't need that. What I don't need, 40 people putting in 40 hours a week. I need like 100 people putting in 2. And that's, if everybody does a little, then nobody has to do a lot, and we overcome some of those barriers. Now, you may never be able to get outdoor knocking because of your schedule, but you talked about there's some things you can do, mm-hmm. And again, if people have money, they can always, if you can't give me your time, I'll take your treasure, and if you can't give your treasure, I'll take your time. But I think it really becomes, how do we as a party, we care about the issues that we support, we care about the people that we support. How do we really ramp things up to the point where let's put some things where your mouth is, right? Let's get out there and say, I can't spend 40 hours a week, but I can spend 1 hour a week. I can spend 2 or 3 hours a month. And you start multiplying that by the 500 state committee members. You start multiplying that by all the House and Senate folks. You start multiplying that by our delegates. And now suddenly you have thousands upon thousands of hours, 1 or 2 hours at a time, and we'll change the world. I mean, and again, I make it sound like it's easy. It's not going to be easy. It's going to be a slog finding these people. I know that.
Right.
But I really want people to begin to change their attitudes about how we approach this. We do an awful lot of complaining about, well, we can't do this, we can't do that, and I get it. It's tough. But if we really want to win these elections, if we want to be serious, then it's going to take some effort. I mean, we can't do it alone, right?
So how do we go about what kind of support is the state party going to offer to some of the candidates happening right now? Because like right now, like you said, we need to start thinking about next year for mm-hmm. all the locals. But we're not that far away from primary season for the federal elections, right? Right. It's February.
Yes.
So it's halfway through February. We got primaries in June?
Well, you have July? The sign-up period in June, and then the primaries will be in September.
Right.
So people have to make decisions. So right now, the Committee to Elect House Republicans is working really, really hard to find those 400 House candidates that we need to fill all those ballot slots, and recognizing that some towns may be a real challenge, and asking somebody to run in those towns where it's a real challenge is tough. It's like I'm going to walk up to you and say, hey, listen, I want you to buy some signs. I want you to knock on doors. I want you to do all these things. And by the way, the odds of you winning are somewhere between slim and none. And slim left town. I mean, it's really challenging asking those people. Now, that's not true. I mean, again, that's a number of seats out there. But most of the seats are competitive. And we're asking you again, our House people are volunteers. They make $100 a year. Right. And unless you live in Berlin, you're not going to make a lot on the. You're right. It is a lot of work. So it's a tough. I mean, for all the reasons you were saying, it's a tough ask to ask people to give up a day job or give up time with their family to go out and do there. But it's so important to have a good slate of. I mean, winning elections begins with having candidates that are effective and can get out there and do the job. But even in those districts where the odds of winning are remote at best, do these people have value? Absolutely. Because for all the reasons I was talking about before, if you run somebody in a Democratic district, you're forcing that Democratic candidate to actually have to campaign. You're forcing them to spend money. You're forcing them to stay in town as opposed to going to some other town and spending the money there and knocking on doors. We absolutely don't want any empty slots. Yeah. We want every seat challenged. And we did great last time. I think it was 384 out of 400, and my goal, of course, is 400. Let's find everybody for every seat. But what people don't realize is the total number of people hours that go into recruiting those 400 people. It's literally thousands of hours.
Yeah, I mean, you've got to convince them. I mean, because when you go and you ask somebody, you're asking them to do all of those things, right? You need to start door knocking for months on end. You need to pay for signs, print signs, do some mailings. You need to do this. Oh, by the way, if you do win, you need to give up January through June at least 4 days a week, 3 days for session, or 3 days for committee and 1 day for session, right? I mean, you and your employer has to be good with that, right? There's a huge time commitment in there, and there is some flexibilities, and most employers in New Hampshire understand that and can give you that flexibility. But you are asking a lot, but that also lends to. This is why there's a lot of gray hair in the State House, is because almost a majority of the State House are folks who are already retired from their day jobs.
Yeah, you either need somebody who's retired.
It is a big commitment, but we do need those people.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you think about some of the great legislation we've passed over the last 8-10 years. I mean, that only happens because we have Republican majorities. And the result of that, by the way, is we live in the best state to live, work, and raise a family. We are number one in so many different areas. And, you know, tax burden, healthiest, I mean, best place to, I mean, we're number one in so many different areas. But that doesn't happen by accident. It only happens when you have strong Republican people in there that they're passing good policies that make that happen. It doesn't happen otherwise. And we saw, I forget what year it was, maybe it was 2018, 2020, I forget what year it was, but the Democrats actually won the House. And I joked with some of the reps, I'm like, can you even read the N on the button you have to press to vote no? And they're like, no, I wore it off. I mean, you can't even read it. You see the Y plenty.
Gary said he wore his off. And
you think Governor Sununu had 70 vetoes? And I mean, that's not fun when you're in that. And I'm okay with the Democrats never having any fun when it comes to the State House.
Well, speaking of the State House, like I said, we're coming up on midterm elections. I mean, that's a slot that's open as well, right?
Yeah, everybody's 2 years.
Right. So when I'm thinking of the governor.
Yeah.
Right. So we've got a challenger coming out of Rochester?
Portsmouth. Yeah.
Is it the mayor of Portsmouth? Okay.
Deegan McEachern.
Yeah. Tell us what are we looking at there?
So again, let's understand Portsmouth's one of those places I was talking about that is probably one of the bluer parts of our state. I mean, Portsmouth's a tough place for Republicans. So, you know, from what I understand, he is cut from the same cloth as pretty much every other Democrat that we've been dealing with lately. Very progressive, looking at pro-taxes. I mean, the Senate just killed $1 billion worth of taxes last week. So, I mean, those are the kinds of things that we can expect. You know, why would he be any different than any of these other people? Because that's where the Democrat Party is today. I joke years ago when I was growing up, my parents were conservative Democrats. They were Kennedy Democrats, and I grew up in New York, so I mean, go figure, right? But when Ronald Reagan was elected, I'm like, this is the guy, and this is the philosophy. I was always a conservative, but I looked at what the Democrats were offering back then under Jimmy Carter, and more recently under Joe Biden, which was like a replay of Jimmy Carter, only maybe worse. You know, I mean, that's where the Democratic Party is today. It's woke, it's out of touch, and it really is not aligned with New Hampshire values. And you can't tax your way to prosperity. You can't. We've seen over the years, you throw more money at problems. You don't solve the problems. You just throw more money at it, and then they say they want even more. So that's what you can expect from Deegan McEachern, is just more of the same. As Reagan put it, it's a rerun of the same show that they've been playing for the last 50 years.
Do you think Kelly will have a problem?
I don't think so.
So you think we're pretty safe with the corner office this time around?
I absolutely think that. But, I mean, is she going to have to work and campaign like she's 10 points behind because that's how you win? Yeah, you know, she's going to have to campaign hard, and I'm sure she will. But I think we're in good shape. If we can put together the infrastructure like I've been talking about, that's going to support our candidates up and down the ballot. And we have that good registration advantage, but again, if they don't turn out, it doesn't matter how many we have. And I would just encourage everybody that's out there that has an R after their name or a right-leaning independent, you've got to come out and vote. And that way we can make sure that the governor gets reelected. We continue to hold the House and the Senate. And by the way, I look at New Hampshire as the firewall on these federal races. You know, keep holding on to the Senate, holding on to the House in D.C. is not a foregone conclusion, but certainly electing a Republican senator and 1 or 2 Republican members of Congress is our best way of making sure that the president has a Congress that he can work with his last 2 years.
So, speaking of that, California just got the go-ahead on their gerrymandering plan. Mm-hmm. So they've cut out an estimated 5 Republican seats mm-hmm. out of their House races. Mm-hmm. We have 2 up for grabs this time around. Mm-hmm. We have an incumbent, and I think we have 2 folks running in CD2. We have Lily and we have Victor.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, Victor Orlando just got in.
Right. Victor was my guest here last week.
Okay.
So, and Lily's been on the show a few times. So we've got those 2 races, mm-hmm. And then we have CD1.
Mm-hmm. And we have 4 candidates right now for that.
We have 4 Republican candidates. I think I've had 3 of them on. And then we have the Senate race. Mm-hmm. We have Pappas in that one, and we have possibly Sununu, John?
Well, you have Scott Brown and John Sununu are both still running.
Yeah. So Scott's been on the show. John, you haven't come on the show yet. What's the state's party plan to kind of assist these folks?
Well,
or are we kind of in a holding pattern till after primary?
Well, we have to be neutral per our bylaws until after the primary.
Okay.
So again, if Lily had no challenger, we could have supported her early on. It is a challenge at times having as late a primary as we do, because it really is a sprint from September to November. For these folks. It's great when you're an incumbent.
We've talked about getting that changed as well. That's something that we're working on maybe in the future.
Yeah, but right now it is what it is, so we're gonna work with that. But we have to kind of wait. So our job is to be able to, again, work to raise money, work to build this infrastructure. So the get out the vote effort doesn't change depending on who's on the ballot. The get out the vote is the get out the vote. And the bottom line is if we get enough of our people to show up, it doesn't matter who's on the ballot, we're going to win. And that's the approach we're going to be taking. Is I can't support one over the other, but what we can do is put things in place so that no matter who ends up winning that primary, we can position them in the best place to win.
What does the party get involved? I understand the party gets involved in the get out the vote and all of the grassroots efforts and whatnot. Mm-hmm. But does the party get involved in specific policies? Like the whole woke agenda, right? Mm-hmm. Everything that's going on. Like, can you set up the primary winner by supporting conservative values, conservative policies?
I'm not sure I follow where you're going.
Well, the party's all about the get out the vote, but does the party take a stance on any of these things?
Well, certainly we support the Republican platform that speaks to all of those kinds of things, like the anti-woke and all that.
But is there anything that you can do advertising-wise?
Oh yeah, no,
propaganda-wise,
no.
All of those things.
Oh yeah, messaging-wise, I'm kind of in. We've been sending out a couple press releases even the last couple weeks. I mean, there was John Lynch's daughter was looking like she was going to plan on run, and I sent a letter to the Attorney General, and we issued a press release about some of the potential election irregularities that she's potentially been involved in, and asking for an investigation of that. And lo and behold, the very next day, she had a hip problem that was going to preclude her from running for governor. And those are the kinds of things that we can do, is make sure that the voters are aware of some of the challenges that these Democratic candidates have. And we can certainly talk to the good things that we've done in our legislature and with the issues that we've supported, whether it's pro-Second Amendment, whether it's election integrity, whether it's getting rid of the inspections, those kinds of issues that our legislature's been quite successful in getting good things passed. It was like I said, we didn't get to the #1 status in all these areas by accident. It comes as a result of good policies. The problem you have in a midterm, when you have your parties in power, is that people forget. And we're going to do our best to make sure that the people don't forget that under Joe Biden, the Democrats gave them 22% inflation and high unemployment and $5 a gallon gasoline and eggs at $12 a dozen and things. We need to remind them, because unfortunately, people have a pretty short memory when it comes to that stuff. And so our challenge has got to be making sure that as we're messaging out there, we remind them that under Republicans, we've lowered the inflation rate. We're trying to make things more affordable. We're trying to keep taxes under control. We're sending lots of money back to the town to ostensibly lower property taxes. And those are the kinds of things that I think are going to make a difference. And I think you're right. In the past, maybe we haven't messaged as effectively as we could. But we're going to be looking to continue that effort right through the summer and then into the fall. And then like I say, be ready to help people remember that now more than ever, we need Republicans in office to help maintain the momentum that we've gotten both here in New Hampshire and down in Washington.
Yeah, I think messaging is something that I almost don't see enough of from the Republican Party, right? There are so many bad things coming out of the Democrat Party, and all of the propaganda that comes through the lamestream media, right, WMUR and whatnot. They're not going to report on facts until they're forced to do so, right? And so we need to be better at jumping on that, right? When someone says something stupid, a lot of the times I'll read a headline and I'll read that Chuck Schumer said something absolutely crazy, bat crap crazy, right? The same with Ilhan Omar or, any of these people. They'll say something absolutely crazy. And in my mind, I'm like, there's not a sane person on this planet who will listen to that and believe it and take it forward. Right? And so I ignore it. And I feel like the GOP as a whole does the same thing. They look at it like, who's crazy enough to listen to that garbage? Yeah. Right? Lo and behold, a week later, there's, a riot and a whole paid protester on CNN. You see these crowds of people who are espousing that same viewpoint that you think, who is stupid enough to do that? Who is dumb enough to say that men who pretend to be women can get in the boxing ring with women, right? That is common sense. Who is dumb enough to believe that that is okay? Yet here we are in a world where we've got the entire Democrat Party saying, yeah, that's okay. It's okay for them to damn near kill a woman who has spent her entire life becoming the best female boxer on the planet and then getting the piss beat out of her, in the boxing ring on the Olympic stage, right? That's not okay. And so the point I'm trying to get at is when I see something absolutely bat crap crazy come out of a Democrat's mouth, I ignore it. And I feel like we should stop ignoring. We should jump on it immediately as a party and jump on it, and, because our first reaction is we're not going to even give lip service to something that dumb. But I think we have to now. We have to jump on it and explain to people why this is absolutely dumb, absolutely crazy, and why you just cannot listen to these people, not even, and you cannot let it permeate through the media for more than a couple of days, right? You can't let that happen because it will become a scourge that we can't fight anymore.
Yeah. I mean, I think you're right. We do need to pick more battles than perhaps we have. Again,
exactly.
Yeah. Again, I think I joke that the Democrats are offering us a buffet of nonsense, and they're a target-rich environment, and it's kind of like you look at what they give you, and it's like, all right, which one do I pick today? Because there's just so many opportunities to do so. But Donald Trump proved that the media is not necessarily Republicans' friend. I mean, we knew that all along, but he kind of highlighted
I knew that in the 80s.
Yeah, but at the same time, we're getting better at looking at alternative media. We're getting better at doing podcasts. I mean, it's why I'm on your show tonight, is to help people understand that the state party, we don't necessarily have the resources that the Democrats do, but we're going to fight way above our weight, and we're going to try and make a difference. But again, getting back to what we talked about before, I want to put out a media message that's accessible to the average Republican voter, the average Republican activist, where they can go into the webpage, right-click on a graphic, and then copy and paste that into their own Facebook page. See, that's how we leverage what we do. And it's the only way it's going to work, right?
We've got to get with the times.
We've got to be able to make it easy for people to support. I mentioned before, what's your one thing? Well, maybe your one thing is right-clicking on a graphic and posting it on your X feed or your Facebook feed or your Instagram or whatever. We certainly need to be where the voters are and work to influence them. And we can't, to your point, we can't wait until September after the primary to suddenly say, let's go. It's got to be a trickle, kind of death by 1,000 cuts approach.
I think that's what I was getting at all along.
Yeah, I mean,
we've got to do messaging and grassroots. We've got to be on top of these things that are so absurd that we think that it's not going to go anywhere. But nowadays, they've got a money machine that's making these absurd things go somewhere. And sometimes I think it's some liberal billionaire out there who's just doing it to amuse himself. Right? I
don't know George Soros, but you may be right.
I honestly think that they've got so much money that they can do this just to amuse themselves.
Yeah. Well, and you're right. I think
because it doesn't matter who's in power, it's not going to affect him in the rest of his life, right? No. He's at the end anyway. He's not taking it with him.
Right. But I mean, I think that our approach has to be a constant barrage in places where we can kind of make a difference in terms of changing opinions. At the end of the day, the Republicans need to get out and vote. If you're a registered Republican, you got to show up. I mean, period, end of statement. You just got to be there. And if you can't be there, we've done a better job of embracing absentee ballots. And it's a challenge, and I realize some people still get a little heartburn over that. But if you can't be there, your options are either you fill in an absentee ballot application or you don't vote. And to me, not voting should kind of be not an option for you folks. So the Republicans, we can work on that piece of it. The real, I mean, the game is won or lost in the middle. It's won or lost with the independents. And we need to make sure that we're messaging to them how crazy some of the things are with the Democrats these days, but also, again, those good things that we have done that have made their lives demonstrably better than it would be if the others were in charge. And it's both a pain and pleasure kind of approach, where they need to, again, be reminded that 4 years ago, things were not so good. And that wasn't Republicans that were doing that. That was the Democrats that were in charge during that whole period, at least at the national level. But that's a time when, we talk about politics being local, but what Joe Biden did to our economy, what Joe Biden did to prices and food and supply chain and the lockdowns to freedom to national security to, the list just goes on. And those are national kind of level things that we don't influence necessarily as much as the state party. But they affect people at the local level, and they need to be reminded, because it's been 3 or 4 years now, and people like to forget because they've moved on to the next thing.
So as far as to get out the vote, one thing that has always bothered me is like I said, we all have jobs. Voting Day is not a national holiday. It's
I wish
not
it
a
was.
Holiday. If it was, then people wouldn't have to go to work, and they would know, hey, the reason I have this day off is because I'm supposed to vote. That's the case in other countries. I'm not necessarily advocating for a national holiday, but what happens, and I see this all the time, is we'll get up to voting day, like within a week or so, and I'll know that next Tuesday is voting day, right? Not next Tuesday, I'm just being right. I'll know that, hey, Tuesday's coming up, it's time to vote. And I'll remind my wife, and I'll remind my kids, right? I'll remind everybody around me. But when that happens, I find that nobody else knows that it's voting day, right? Oh, I got some meetings that day. I've got plans that evening. I've got, right? And so most of the people that I know that I'm trying to, like, hey, take a break and go do this, right? They're like, I'll try to do it on my way home from work, right? And I don't have time to do it in the morning when I get up to work. What happens is these folks don't know, right? I don't think there's enough push from the state level to get the word out. I think we should have like a 2-week barrage of social media and whatnot from the state party. I think there should be a 2-week barrage that reminds folks, hey, voting day is on this Tuesday. If you don't have the day off, ask your boss if you can have an hour off. Ask your boss if you can leave work early. Ask your boss if you can get the right. Have this plan and help coach folks on how they can make the time. By, we're 2 weeks out. Talk to your employer today about how they're going to get you to the voting office, to the voting polls, right? And so I think we should have a little bit more of a push there, because I don't think when it comes to, especially to local elections, which are coming up in March, it's just a couple weeks away, I don't think people are aware of it. And I think we should have a standard push to get people aware with some coaching to, here's how you should speak to your employer about this. This is important, and this is important to your employer too, because whatever tax implications take place after these votes, after these whether it be for a representative that's going to impose or remove a tax burden on your employer, or whether it be a local warrant article that's going to increase or remove taxes on a local business, right? You can make this personal to the employers too, and you can coach employees on how to ask their boss well in advance for some leeway on that time.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great idea. One of the things that, and I appreciate that, because one of the things that I'm doing is I don't profess to want to corner the market on every good idea. We have, roughly 400,000 people that voted Republican in the last election. And there's so many talented and smart people out there that have all these. That doesn't mean I can implement everyone, because again, there's a dollar sign that goes along with every one of those. But at the same time, there are a lot of good ideas. I think that's an excellent one. We need to make sure that people understand. And again, it gets back to the, how do we let people know what's going on? How do we help them help us? Right. You know, it's like the old money, you know, help me, help you kind of thing.
Yeah, like I said, me going about Election Day, I find that people don't even know it's Election Day until the day before.
Well, and that's certainly true in these March elections and the primary. Yeah. November's a little better, but I think your point's well taken, that there are a lot of people that need, you know, it's kind of like plan to vote. Right. And that's going to be, has to be a theme. And again, that's where the absentee ballot applications may come in. That's where
that goes to part of the coaching. Hey, you know, the deadline for applying for your absentee ballot is coming up. If you can't do it, then so that's part of the coaching. I wonder if we come up with a standard coaching palette here, right?
Yeah, I mean, you're doing something really great too. That's also part of our plan, and that is we have a woman who has developed. It's a website, it's an app, but it's basically a family and friends program where you can sign up, and you're committing when you sign up to talk to 3 people. You can talk as many as you want, but I'm going to talk to 3 people, make sure that they're registered, make sure that they're aware, and make sure if they can't vote, they're going to get an absentee ballot application. I mean, in other words, helping these, exactly what you're talking about, help coach these people. It's not just a website, it's not just an app, it's a person who has a relationship with other Republican voters that can say, are you going to show up? Can I get you to commit to show up? And again, if everybody, 1,000 people do that, or 10,000 people do that, now suddenly you're kind of multiplying what's going to happen on Election Day in a very positive and good way. And by the way, it's kind of like the old multi-level marketing thing. It's like you tell 2 friends, they tell 2 friends, they tell 2 friends, and the next thing you know, in their universe, you're making $1 bazillion. But in our case, we're winning elections. Right. And you look at, I mean, especially in the State House, I mean, I forget what the number is offhand, but it's something like on those races where we lose, it's like the average is under 200 votes. I mean, it's really nothing when you think about it.
If you have that educational, it's almost like you almost don't even have to do the messaging part. You almost don't even have to do the campaigning part. If real conservatives who've been conservative their entire lives simply show up to the polls and vote their conscience, right? I don't think we have to do a whole lot of, I mean, I want to do the messaging, but I don't think we would have to, because I think we're already paying attention, right? That's, when we have the polls, like I was mentioning before the show, when we have the polls that say 71% of the country wants illegal immigrants to leave the country, when they say that is the majority, that is a huge majority considering the margins of error for the last 7 or 8 presidential elections. 71% of the country wanting the illegals out of the country. We don't have to message to that. We just need that 71% of the people to show up and vote, right? And I think that's the same with almost every conservative message there is, and even here in New Hampshire. We know that common sense is going to prevail. We just need to get common sense to the polls.
Yeah. Well, and I think you're making a lot of really, really good points. There was something less than 400,000 people that voted for Donald Trump in the last election. There was something, I think it was 435 voted for Governor Ayotte. If 90% of those people, I think maybe even 80% of those people show up, we win just about every election. Because they're not going to show, again, you look at the difference between a presidential election year and this midterm, it's like 70–80% of the people that showed up in 24 are going to show up in 26. If we can narrow that gap, that's huge. That is like, but again, some of this is going to come down to the Trump voters. So the Trump voters going to show up this time. And I certainly would encourage them to, because if you want Donald Trump to have a full 4-year second term and not be dealing with impeachment after impeachment after impeachment, you know, the Trump MAGA voters have got to show up, because that's going to help us be that firewall that I was talking about before.
I also feel like they will. I just can't imagine those voters with that fire in their belly that showed up. I can't imagine them not showing up this time around, right? But history shows that we get lazy. And like you said, we forget.
Well, and traditionally in midterms, both in 2018 and 2022, they really didn't. And we really need them to this time. I mean, we need them to every time. But I think this time, again, the president's not on the ballot. They just have to say, I need to support him
anyway. I think you're right.
Anyway.
They didn't show up in 2018. We got lazy, just like every midterm. That's the historical. Yeah. In 2020, I got to disagree with you. We did show up.
2020 we did, but not 2022. That was the red wave thing that never happened.
But in 2020, we showed up. We just saw this anomaly of 20 million extra votes for Biden, right? And then in 2024, those 20 million votes disappeared, and the liberals were, oh, we lost 20 million votes. No, you didn't. Let's go back to both of Obama's elections. Let's go back to all of the elections, all the way back to Clinton. 60 million is right around the margin that you always got, right? This 80 million number came out of nowhere. Now we're back to normal with the 2024, where you got somewhere in the 63 million or something voted Democrat. That was a normal number. The 80 million number was an anomaly. When any statistician will show that that was an anomaly. You can go back 30, 40 years, and you can watch those numbers, and then you see this spike for that Biden, and then you're going to tell me that that wasn't a stolen election. Rudy Giuliani gets convicted of what was it, down in Georgia, right? Now, 2 years later, after having to pay that fine, it ruins his career. Georgia now admits that there's over 300,000 votes that shouldn't have been certified. But the margin of victory in the state of Georgia was only 11,000 votes, right? That happened, all right? The Georgia election for president in 2020 was stolen, right? We know those to be facts. So I don't know where I got on that, but the point is, I was disputing with you. In 2020, we did show up.
Yeah, but 2020 was different because, again, it was a presidential year. It's these off-year elections.
And that off year in 2022, I think we were just so in despair over Biden and COVID, because we were still locked down.
Yeah.
Everybody was still wearing masks if you weren't paying attention, right? I think the second half of Trump's first presidency, where he was, like you said, impeachment, impeachment, impeachment. I'm telling you, I think the MAGA voters learned that lesson. We can't have that happen again, and I think they're going to show up.
And I hope so. I mean, I really do, and we're going to work hard to make sure they get out. We're going to make sure, because, again, they're not going to be enough. We need to make sure that those independents are showing up for us as well, and then the traditional Republican, like you were talking, the traditional conservative Republicans, they've generally been pretty reliable. But you're right, sometimes people get lazy, and we need to just make sure that, again, if you have an R after your name, you need to show up, and if we do that, we'll win. I mean, this is a get out the vote election, and between now and November, you and everybody else is just going to hear me say, you got to show up, you got to show up, you got to show up, because that's going to make all the difference.
It really is. So, all right, so we got a few minutes. What else do we want to talk about?
I don't know. I'm just happy the pitchers and catchers are going on, and maybe winter will be over, right?
Yeah, it doesn't feel like spring training to me. I spent an hour clearing snow out of my driveway
Yeah,
today.
me
It's
too.
not spring. I don't have my motorcycle out yet.
Yeah, me too. You know, it's no, serious. I mean, I'm excited for this position. I'm excited to be out there trying to do some good work for Republicans out there. We're excited. So,
well, what possessed you to take on this type of torture?
well, you know, my background, I'm a former, well, some semi-current, but former business professor. I was a business teacher for a long time. I'm familiar with marketing and operations.
Conservative professor?
I know.
What is wrong with you?
I know. I'm like an endangered species. But I looked at what's been. I mean, I've been involved. I worked for Papa Sununu, you know, 30 years ago, and you know, I've had the political bug. You know, most of my I'm one of those. I had plantar fasciitis when I was 13 and sat around watching the Watergate hearings all summer because I couldn't go outside and do a lot because I couldn't walk. And it was fascinating to me. I came away with the wrong conclusion, but I did. But I watched that. So I've always been involved in politics, always enjoyed it, ran for different offices in high school and stuff like that. And I've been involved in kind of more recently in this Republican thing for about the last 10 years. And I've watched the state party, I've watched the county committees, which, you know, I've been chair of for a long time. And just, I'm one of those people I look at and there's got to be a better way. I mean, that's just kind of my mantra. And if I can somehow help, I mean, I remember the first time I got involved in, I was so naive and so foolish, but it's like, all right, I need to do something for my country. I read The Audacity of Hope by Obama, and I'm reading in this, and it's, if you ever get a chance to read, it's scary because it's like so much of what the Democrats say. It sounds so good, but it's so bad.
Well, that's the trap that I think all Democrat voters fall into. Right? It's all feel good.
Yeah.
And I don't think they realize that this is feel good and there are consequences. There are long-term consequences to a lot of these things.
Oh.
And we're experiencing a lot of the long-term consequences of nationalizing education, right? I mean, we're
healthcare.
In healthcare.
Yeah.
Like these things are all coming to a head, and I think people are waking up to it.
Yeah.
Right.
So
at least they are in New Hampshire, and hopefully we can translate that into a, you know, making sure that Pappas doesn't win, making sure that we got to send at least one person to Washington this time around.
Well, let me just finish one thing. I worked really hard. Yeah. I decided to put 3 lawn signs on my front lawn, a bumper sticker on my car. I'm like, okay, I'm good. That's not enough. But you know, but to your point about Pappas, if that guy gets elected, and I'm going to look right at your camera right now. You folks need to understand, if Chris Pappas gets elected, he will be a senator for the next 30 years.
Yeah. Yep. Because he's going to have all that Democrat money behind him to just, and everyone's just going to say, oh, I love the chicken fingers, so I'm going to vote for Pappas.
Right? Yep. He